welcome to a brand new episode of the Jams Tea Podcast, where we spin the jams and spill the tea. And this week we're coming at you with a brand new Now episode where we talk about new releases, new announcements, and new things in the world of music and art and all of that fun junk. And this week we have our special topic, which is we're going to be talking about our favorite songs that are non-album singles, songs released by bands that are singles that never made it onto an album or EP proper. So we are talking about some left of the dial stuff this week, a little bit, some deep cuts. So if you want to tell us some of your favorite non-album single deep cuts, throw them in the comment section. We'd love to hear about them, love to talk about them.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm really looking forward to that. We've had some pretty cool discussion topics recently for songs that maybe we wouldn't normally get to talk about all that much. So it's great to have another cool one. Stick around for that one. Cool to have Morgan for it as well. So we're going to have a smorgasbord of selections. But first, let's get into the big music news of the week. Easily the most dominating musical story in the week leading up to us recording this is this heavily publicized trial involving Ed Sheeran and the potential copyright infringement of his song Thinking Out Loud on Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. Now, of course, anyone who keeps any kind of tabs on these sorts of music copyright trials knows that the estate of Marvin Gaye are frankly vampiric, like just absolutely
lunatics,
brutally just hardline sues anything that even vaguely takes inspiration from Marvin Gaye's music, to the point of,
which is everything.
And this was the narrative, right? Because it's like and it's not exclusively a problem of Marvin Gaye's estate, although they've certainly been involved in a number of the most high publicity trials of this nature in the last decade. You know, and actually we're coming up on the 10-year anniversary of Blurred Lines, which was one of the big ones that Gaye's estate was involved in. But it's the thing, right, is that they're ultimately doing, and there's definitely, I guess, sides of the debate here, but ultimately what they're doing from my perspective, and I say on behalf of all of us from our perspective, is kind of like demeaning and ultimately reducing what music is and what songwriting is. And, you know, because ultimately what they're trying to do, and the precedent that they were trying to set essentially with this trial, was basically to copyright a chord progression, which is honestly insane. You know, and there was the
draconian.
This was the dialogue throughout the week, was essentially like, you know, it was funny to see everyone basically doing the same tweet, which was like, you know, I don't like Ed Sheeran's music, but you know, I hope he wins his trial, because
it was either that or a viral tweet being like, I low-key hope he loses, which is like, yeah, I mean, funny, but also like,
there's always
let's
trials.
not.
But it was just really
funny. I wasn't on board with that until he was like, I'll quit music if I lose.
Well, and then I was like, that was the thing. Like, everyone was making the same joke basically, and it was like tired the first time someone made it, which was like, well, this is good. I mean, well, Ed Sheeran losing this would be really bad for music, but also I don't like Ed Sheeran. Like, that was the joke. The whole week was everyone making that joke. Was everyone being like, you know, I am so pro, you know, music and stuff, but I don't like Ed Sheeran, but I think what he's doing is important. You know, it was everyone being like, somehow their hatred of his music was in conflict with their desire for him to, when really they don't really have anything to do with one another. What you think of Ed Sheeran's music is irrelevant to the substance of this case, because you don't, unless you hate his music solely because you think it rips other music off, which is not really why people dislike Ed Sheeran's music. They just kind of don't find him insufferable as a personality and as a figure, and because his music is so overplayed, whatever, you know, all that sort of stuff. But just people being like, I think Ed Sheeran should not lose this case, but I hate him. It was just really funny to see people kind of try and reconcile these two seemingly conflicting thoughts in their heads. I found it really, really amusing all week. And but yeah, no, he came out victorious. There was this great clip that I saw. I just loved it so much, of like Ed Sheeran leaving the courtroom, and like some person, like, because there was a crowd of people outside the courtroom, and he's just walking past, and there's one person just there is like, Ed Sheeran, I'm in love with the shape of you. He just said it like that. And then the person behind him was like, I don't think he wants to hear that. And it was just the funniest thing.
Which is a shame because you can probably hear that if you go to any grocery store in America.
Yeah. And you know, the whole thing was like the smoking gun of the case from the prosecution's, not the prosecution, I guess the plaintiff point of view was that like, well, Ed Sheeran did a mashup of his song and Marvin Gaye's song at a concert. He like played the song and it went into the cover because there's therefore cheat. Bad at music.
No shit.
You know, and it was just really funny and kind of terrifying because this was something that was being taken seriously and indulged in a high court.
That's like if like Katy Perry's estate was just like, we're gonna sue, or no, if it would be like if Kate Bush's estate was just like, we're gonna sue Katy Perry because Cloud Busting and fucking California Girls were in a mashup together because it's got the same chords.
It reminded me a bit, and I guess I'm just thinking about this because we did a Lana Del Rey video recently of when Radiohead's label sued Lana Del Rey for Get Free because it had the same chord progression as Creep. And it's like, yeah, Creep, it really invented...
You know, the really singular chord progression in Creep.
That Creep absolutely invented 100%, fully and completely.
Definitely the first, the innovators.
So
truly.
We have these stories all the time, but it was like, there was real stakes with this because if the Gaye estate had won this, if they had won this,
fucking owned.
If they had won this, then,
Gaye estate.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop calling journalists the Fifth Estate and start calling them the Gaye estate. If the Gaye estate,
or as I call it, Vermont.
Woo! Damn, we're look, I'm lining them up. You're not gonna
fire.
Yeah, if the Gaye estate had, I can't say that. I just can't do it. If the representatives of the family of Marvin Gaye had one, maybe he should just not have been called Marvin Gaye.
I mean, that was yeah.
Maybe he should have changed his name.
I mean, it worked out all right for him, but
yeah, until his dad killed him. That's kind of the ultimate example of your name coming back to bite you in the ass, isn't it?
I mean, when you make some of the most heterosexual music of all time, not a diss, by the way, Marvin Gaye's great, but I mean, that is music about a man fucking women.
The album's not called Hear My Queer.
Although,
anyway, I think we move on from the story and just say that we're glad this was a win for music. So good on him. Good on Ed Sheeran. We are going to be reviewing Ed Sheeran's new album Subtract next week. And by we, I mean me and Jake are going to be reviewing Subtract next week.
I mean, I have the time now. I might pony up.
Yeah, I mean, you should. I mean, you don't have to review it. You can just post. Ed's an artist who's like so hated on, including by us, for so long that there's only so far you can take that, right? Before it starts becoming like annoying to do even for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
how many people have a Black Midi diss track?
Like, not
many.
I want to have something good to say about the new Ed Sheeran album, just because if I didn't, I'd feel stupid.
It would be novel.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I want to give it a good
challenge
chance.
As a critic.
If I think it's like even 6 out of 10 good, that'll be an amazing win, frankly. So that's I'm hoping for the best. And you know, he's
on the other hand, it never gets old being a hater.
Yeah. Also in the news this week, I mean, not much of substance other than that, a few puff pieces. One thing that I found particularly funny is that 2000s production whiz kid and legend quickly turned faded and irrelevant man Timbaland has come back this week with previewing a new song, which is notable because it features an AI generated verse from Biggie.
Come on.
Yeah. And Timbaland
let the man rest.
In an Instagram post or in an Instagram video that frankly is deranged, Like he's saying things that are discernible, but he has an energy about him of someone who is not thinking well. is basically like vigorously defending this, talking about how he always wanted to work with Big and never got the chance to until today. And it's very upsetting and just dystopian, frankly. And it's not good. So that happened, and I bring it up only because I feel like we need to expect more of this. And this is obviously something that came and went. No one really paid this much mind, but I'm sure that within a very short amount of time there will be a story of this nature. There'll be what will happen is there'll be a hit, right? There'll be a TikTok hit, or there'll be a song that takes off that has an AI verse.
Yeah.
And that's gonna be a discourse topic. In fact, putting my marker in the ground now, this year, it's going to happen this year. There's going to be a minor hit minimum with an AI verse from a dead celebrity. It's going to take off, and there's going to be discourse for months. I'm calling it. That is happening.
Yeah, probably right.
I wish it had been Joe Biden and Barack Obama do Boys a Liar Part 2. I wish it had been that, because that rules. But, that unfortunately we were too early in the phase for it to seem anything other than a meme, and it all seems like a meme right now. But there's going to be a point where it stops seeming like a meme, and that's when I'm going to want to start shooting.
I mean, how long is it going to be until we get to that point where there's going to be a posthumous AI Biggie album? Because I mean, again, P. Diddy has been pimping out that man's corpse for like decades now, and it's not like they don't have the material with which to do it. They certainly do.
This happens so much with, it'll definitely happen in the realm of hip hop. You're right, because unfortunately we have a greater proportion of artists.
It'll be Tupac or Biggie first.
We have a greater proportion of artists who die young, and that realm, and it's already normalized to profit off of those early deaths with really cheap and disrespectful posthumous releases cobbled together.
Posthumous XXX Tentacion albums.
And this is the thing. I don't think it'll happen with. I think more people will try to make it happen with artists like Biggie or Tupac. I just don't think that those will take off. I think what's more likely to happen is that the first success will be someone who's of slightly lower profile, who still died a tragically young, early death. Maybe someone in the mumble rap scene. I don't know, Lil Peep,
Juice
or
WRLD.
someone. Or Juice WRLD, or
it'll probably be Juice WRLD.
It'll be something like that. And because initially there's going to be so much backlash towards those concepts, but I do think eventually that will relent eventually, and they'll just happen regardless of the backlash, because all publicity is publicity, and people will listen to it and stream it.
Yeah.
So that's bound to happen, I think. Shaq is rapping again. He's made a comeback.
Okay, so one Mr. Shaquille O'Neal, and I shit thee not, had a DJ set at my university last semester.
Really?
What?
He was there
at WKU?
Uh-huh.
That's incredible.
Holy shit. Got to witness the legend.
I didn't go. I don't remember why.
Damn.
Mostly because it sounded awful.
So Shaq, as many of you will know, had a brief stint as a rapper in the 90s, sort of earlier in his NBA career, and obviously committed most of his energy and time to basketball, but still showed
obviously committed homicide.
But continued to show an interest and passion for hip hop throughout his career. Has released singles every now and again. Has had feuds with Damian Lillard. Released a EDM rap song with Steve Aoki last year. Now he's back with a new song. There's a few new songs that have been teased around with him as well on TikTok. I'm not sure what the direction is. There's one song called King Talk that he did with Blackway that I haven't heard, but it's gotten a bit of attention. But I became aware of this because legendary music Twitter account, Crazy Ass Moments in New Metal History, shout out, posted a snippet of a song that Shaq previewed on TikTok called Thotties Hit the Floor.
So true.
And as one might expect from the title, this is a song which interpolates Drowning Pool. Well, no, it samples Drowning Pool. It doesn't interpolate it because there's a sample, and then Shaq is going off. There's a video of him in a really bad CGI truck rapping his ass off. Let's just indulge ourselves for a minute here, right? And appreciate what Shaq is bringing to the table with this new song, Thotties Hit the Floor.
Oh.
Ha, sicker than your average, great with the Drake, 21 Savage. Please do call me Diesel, doing what I want, y'all doing what you need to. Say you wanna go to war, don't tease me, don't wanna see me, turn off TV. We beat TTG off GP on the PG, me and AD and PG. Pull up, big body beat, suckers, drop 6 feet deep. You know I don't stop, 3P, money is a must, eat sleep. I get the bucks, 3 free, squad glowed up, Chief Keef. Came in the game with a cheat wolf, getting to the green like sheep teeth. I do not get it, your movement is whack. Worm at the winners, you're losing in laps. I'm touring the globe, I'ma land on the shore and exploring a boat where it's blue on the map. You ain't got nothing to do on the map. I've been on the map, you knew on the map. You couldn't do what I do with a map. I got a map, my room is a map. I get lost when I go for a nap. I don't get lost when I go for the stacks. I don't feel lost alone at the top. I don't know boss, all I know is Shaq. I know the peso, I know the dinero, like I know the pound and the yen and the euro. I know the queso, I get that in plural. On the paper chase the end of the world.
So that gives you a taste. Oh my god, it's still...
I think I truly lost it when the vocals came into the backing beat. That was
hey, look,
incredible.
Look, as we all know, Drowning Pool's Bodies is one of the best singles of the 2000s. We all know this.
Do we? It's good. It's, you know,
is what it is.
It was a bit. Fucking yes, and it's literally the first rule. So hearing that combined with Shaq's truly, I want to say Rick Ross-esque flow.
It's absolutely Rick Ross-esque.
Yes. Yeah. He rhymed map with map and then with map again.
Talked a lot about maps.
It was hard. I think that's what I'm saying.
My favorite line.
It was hard as fuck.
My favorite line is I get lost when I go for a nap, which is obviously like he's flexing about the size of his mansion, right? Like he can't find his bedroom because he's living that lavishly. But it just sounds like he has dementia. Like it just sounds like he's wandering aimlessly, Citizen Kane style, through his Xanadu estate.
Some Drake on fucking sicko mode, fucking out like a light shit.
Well, this is the thing, is like the flow and the beat is like, it's so like, there's a million songs that have done that before. I mean, frankly, it's like Humble by way of Drake, and it's all that kind of shit in a blender, basically. It's just, here's Shaq doing that for a minute. Point being, it seems as though Shaq is tipping the hat to nu metal. And, you know, it's quite savvy of him. You know, it's coming back into style. This is fashionable now. You know, this is cool. You know, in about a year's time, this kind of shit's not even going to be funny. It's just going to be like, oh yeah, you know, that's the wave. So
Shaq's album is going to be produced by Backwash.
I wouldn't go that far. I don't think
all I'm saying is that I would listen to it.
Oh, sure.
And Backwash would make it. I know she would.
She would. But I'm thinking more like, I don't know. I'm thinking he's probably just going to do an MGK. He's probably going to be Travis Barker or something. I don't know. But like,
look,
might be
Limp Bizkit would be a better band if Shaq replaced Fred Durst. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't think I agree. What I think is that...
Oh, come on. That last Limp Bizkit album would have been better if Shaq was on it. You fucking know this in your heart of hearts.
Fred Durst is an icon. All right. Fred Durst is a G. I don't look.
Yeah.
I'm not saying a lot of the music doesn't suck, but I'm just saying Fred Durst, he's a real one. Like he's one of the goats of the era. You know, it's not about how good the songs are. It's about the icon.
Welcome to the Jams and Tea podcast, where it's not about how good the songs are.
Well, sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's just about whether it goes. And Fred Durst, he brought it. You know, I would fucking I don't want to hear Shaq doing Rollin'. Get the fuck out of here.
You don't.
Well, okay, maybe covering it.
I don't believe that those words just came out of your mouth. That's the most Ryley shit I've ever heard. If we brought that up in the group chat, you would just be like, you know what?
All right,
hard.
Fine. I would listen to Shaq do Rollin'. I just don't think that Rollin' should have always existed as a Shaq song. My favorite Puff piece, like stupid thing that happened this week, is that Billy Corgan, in promoting his his newly released full-length triple album, Atom, which Jake's going to be delivering the final verdict on shortly.
Atom.
That's
what I need when I have heartburn. Atom.
In promoting this, he did an interview with Zane Lowe, and Zane Lowe, the unbearable sycophant that he is, it's one thing to hear him kind of like blowing smoke up the ass of someone who is obviously a creative genius. It's another thing entirely to hear him have to do this with, not that Billy Corgan isn't a creative genius. Of course, made some of the best music of the 90s and maybe some of the best alternative rock music of all time. But certainly...
Yeah, you can stop being a creative genius. At some point, it's a choice.
Yeah. But so what happened was that Zane Lowe asked Billy Corgan for his opinion on the young TikTok famous cult beloved rapper Yeat. I don't know how you say it. I don't know which is funnier.
Yeat.
It's either Yeat like Yeat, or it's Yeat like Yeats the poet, and both of those are funny. But anyway, Yeat. I'm going to go with Yeat because that's the first way I read it in my head when I first saw it. So he asked, I don't know if either of you are familiar with Mr. Yeat's music. A number of big TikTok hits.
Really. Of course I'm not.
But and neither was I either. But I imbibed, and so Billy was played a song, one of Yeat's big hits called "Money So Big," and he was asked for his thoughts on this music, which led Corgan really to wax lyrical about a lot of different things. And I'm going to read a segment of his response here because I think it's kind
Billy
of
Corgan is going to do one thing. It's fucking wax lyrical about some shit.
And this is the thing, Billy Corgan's opinion on Yeat.
Wayne lyrical for once, Billy.
Yeah. So here's what Billy had to say. Actually, no, before I get into this, this would make more sense if I read some of the lyrics of Money So Big. So you have some context here for what Billy's talking about. Here are the lyrics to here's a snippet of the lyrics to Yeat's Money So Big, which Zane Lowe played Billy Corgan in an Apple interview this week. Yeah, my money big body, my money tonka. No, I don't need you, I really don't want you. My money be twerking, my money do dances. I already heard you, I don't want to answer. You ruin everything you touch, you a cancer. Yeah, I'm on the side where we win. You not that guy, because I'm him. I ride that big body right out the lot. It's a GLE, came with a tint. I don't want to hear none of the shit you say. You cap out your chinny chin chin. I'm rocking the latest designer. The finest of fur, that's that chinchilla skin. They trying to copy the wave, and I told them they can't even surf a wave on it yet. They steady been copying my sound. They some birds, they a parrot, if I'm being honest. Why you been capping about your whole life? How you rapping about a whole lie? How you stay rapping about these damn drugs you ain't even tried once in your whole life? Yeah, these kids is some motherfucking burgers. I'm calling them Five Guys. Yeah, these kids fryer than a grease ball. Yeah, he fried. I just pulled up in that Bentley. That bitch got them frog eyes. They're trying to bite the swag, but these bitches biting our dicks. I count every time she sucked me up. That's 160 licks. Can't even count the songs I made in a month. That's 160 hits. They say, Yeat, you keep on evolving. How you so steady with it. They say, Yeat, how your pocket's swollen. You got to show me that shit. Better tell you how I'm doing and shit. Got the devil on my phone. He told me keep doing this shit. Yeah, devil taught me how to get rich. Yeah, how many bands? 6 Twiz and a minivan, couple of big sticks. Bitch better ride me like she on a ripstick. Yeah, they said, what's that red on your chest? I told him that's your bitch lipstick. Yeah, I pulled up in a Tonka and a helicopter. I'm going nuts. Yeah, I had a 50 band and I turned it to a honey bun. Didn't even need to go sign me a deal for these flawless diamonds. Bitch, I'm already up. I got a little thotty. That bitch is the baddest. She up in the coop on me, sucking me up. So that's Yeat's hit, Money So Big.
I love how one of those lyrics is the title to that Viper album. Y'all cowards don't even smoke crack.
Yeah. So that's a bit of where Yeat's coming from. And this is Billy Corgan's opinion on that song. I hear someone struggling with the dissociative world. I understand why people have ripped society apart, whether it's gender, the idea of like, what is a marriage and all this stuff, All these things need to be examined hard. I have no problem with people ripping stuff apart. So what I hear is an artist struggling how to put those ripped pieces back together. Because the human spirit at the end of the day wants to be standing on a black beach in New Zealand, looking at the stars and saying, I am whole, I am complete, and I know what the hell I'm doing here. So for a lot of people, ain't no beach, ain't no stars, ain't no future. But they're still feeling all the human impulses. Who am I? Who's going to love me if I'm myself or whatever? I'm not saying that this artist's journey is this, but that's what I hear. So what you hear on the surface sounds like an abuse of technology. The auto-tune ain't working right. The loops are actually out of time. But I don't think that's on purpose as in a, hey, let's be clever and do this. This is making me feel something that's fresh, and it feels like right now. And look, I bring this up because I thought you'd both find this amusing, but I have to be honest and say that Billy, the way Billy describes this, I can't pretend this is all that different from the way I interrogate, Playboy Cardi, for instance. It's about trying to find a real and relatable emotion in something that is very purposefully, very surface level and frivolous. And so I don't have a wider point.
Give yourself a little bit of credit, man.
I don't have a wider point. I'm just saying that it's interesting how clear-headed to me and how much perspective on art Billy seems to have. And then you listen to his new music and it genuinely just sounds like a mud pancake. It sounds like nothing. It's just interesting to me that there can be such a disconnect between an artist having very real perspective on music. And
what I love about it is that Billy Corgan's inability to not make everything about himself. So he just immediately latches on to these minuscule things and eventually blows it up to being he's just talking about himself when he's talking about Yeat's music. He's all those things are just that's all flows back into him. The monumental ego on display. It's I mean this, never change, Billy, please.
To be fair, I think that's a fair way, if you're an artist, to talk about art, is to kind of just go off and make it about yourself, because that's how we all interpret art, I think. But at the end of the day, despite all the heat, he's still just a rapper named Yeat. One more thing I want to just allude to very briefly, just because Jake made me aware of this. I was seeing some rumblings, there's always Matty Healy. In general. It's always
the constants in our life.
He's always
sky
somewhere.
is blue, the grass is green, Matty Healy is there.
I mean, I know he recently, the thing I was most aware of him for recently was apologizing to Ice Spice for calling her Chinese or something. I don't know. He was on the Adam Friedland podcast and they were shit posting and they were making fun of Ice Spice, and he said some racially insensitive things. And the cool thing about that was that his apology, first of all, he sent her a DM that she just screened completely and didn't respond to. And that just messed him up because he's feeling guilty, but at the same time, he's Matty Healy, so he doesn't know how to process his bad feelings and his embarrassment. So his apology occurred actually here in this country. I'm pretty sure he was doing a show here in New Zealand, and in between songs, he just sort of stopped for a weird Kanye style, not Kanye, that's kind of being a bit mean, but this weird, not rant, but just rambling thing where he's I'm sorry I called Ice Spice Chinese. It's not exactly what he did, but it was like that. Oh, I'm sorry I called her, said mean things about Ice Spice.
Sorry I was marred in with Ice Spice.
Yeah, sorry I was on it with Ice Spice and I said some things. But anyway, that was the last I was aware of Matt Healy being in the news. And now apparently there was a thing with Taylor Swift, but apparently it's not actually a thing because he didn't do anything.
It's completely fabricated, as far as I can tell.
So,
yes, completely.
Apparently, so Taylor Swift broke up with Joe Alwyn, and we're all very sad about it. But then the internet being the internet, they can't just leave a pop star's personal life on its own. They have to automatically, instantaneously start thinking, and of course because it's a woman as well, they have to automatically start thinking, well, who's going to be the next? It's actually quite funny how
and
It's quite funny
People
how
had no hesitancy doing this with Taylor Swift. Not like she's famous for having this been done to her like 10 years ago, and everyone got mad at people for that.
Yeah, but no,
it's over again.
We live in a society where shipping is a constancy, right? We're shipping. If Zoomers on the internet, Zoomer stan armies on the internet aren't shipping to completely unrelated artists, then they would not be breathing.
Die.
They would asphyxiate, right? They have to do that. It's like a shark, right? Sharks have to keep swimming in order to stay alive. Stans have to keep shipping in order to stay alive. That's how it works. It's the economy. It's the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah.
And so apparently,
yes,
there was this subsect of Jake, you're going to have to fill me in here. Apparently, what was happening with Taylor Swift shipping, and how did this relate to Matty Healy?
As far as I'm concerned, this is conjured from the ether that there was a rumor that she was dating somebody, and it's Matty Healy. And the reason that I have to figure that this is conjured from the ether is because she is literally in the middle of the biggest tour of her entire career. Do you think this woman has any free time right now? You idiots!
Also, like,
Jesus!
Also, like, we don't know Taylor. We don't know Matty. But I would find it unfathomable that either of them would have any appeal to the other on that level.
No,
like Taylor Swift.
I can kind of see her appealing to him.
Maybe it would be like this. It would be like
as
this
in she is an attractive woman and he is a fan of attractive women.
Yeah, but like why this lingered on
and
me.
I mean, so say we all.
Why this lingered on me when Jake mentioned it was just that I found like I wanted to just have a little thought experiment here. Who is like, I don't know, it doesn't have to either two particular things. One, who's the funniest possible person for Matt Healy to date? Or if that's too specific of a question, what's the funniest possible celebrity pairing that you could imagine? I just want to indulge this idea for a second.
I mean, now it's Ice Spice
and Matty. You think you want the beef to just completely go out the road? But I'm like
a reconciliation that leads to love,
an enemies to lovers arc.
Yeah, I'm wondering like
exactly.
I'm wondering like Taylor Swift and Pete Davidson. I'm wondering like
wouldn't even flinch.
I look, hand to God. Rihanna and I were talking about this I'm yesterday, sure and we were just like, it would be so fucking funny if it was Pete Davidson and Kanye West would just die. He'd just die. It would be hysterical. I vote that it would be Taylor and Pete Davidson.
That would be like the singularity. You know what I mean? Like everything would break. The world would completely.
The simulation would come untethered.
I'm genuinely stunned Pete Davidson didn't get with Julia Fox at some point.
Who's to say? Right? I mean, maybe they did, and we just don't know. No?
I mean, it's not like it's off the table.
That could be true.
Maybe he just forgot.
I mean, he goes through women pretty quickly, so I can understand that.
All this to say, my ship is Pete Davidson and Matty Healy. I think that would resolve all of this beautifully.
And world peace. I think would happen.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now Jake, I want to turn to you at this point. I know you've got a few things that you want to shout out, that both in terms of new music, in terms of things that you've just been getting into and listening to lately. What has been on your agenda this week?
One thing that I just want to give at least a passing mention to, just because it was mentioned in comments to us, is the fact that, yes, we are aware of the fact that the Mars Volta did, in fact, put out an acoustic album that is entirely reworked versions of their songs from last year's reunion album, the self-titled. And I was going to do a segment on that. And the thing is, stay posted. I promise your patience will be rewarded. I am going to talk about that eventually in the context, hopefully, of something maybe a little bit bigger. So Mars Volta fans, stay on standby. Hopefully I'll have something for you in the near future. Look forward to something hopefully this summer. Besides that, in terms of actual new music. Bring Out Ya Dead. The Smashing Pumpkins released their final chapter in their triple album, Atom. And I talked about each chapter of this little phase. The first two chapters of which were basically the same level of quality, which is to say, not good, unsurprisingly. The first one mainly because it contained a series of moderate highs and disastrous lows.
I love the Nationals' new album, the first two chapters of Atom.
The second part of the album trilogy being more consistent, but also more consistently kind of boring and blasé for this band. Nothing as disastrously funny as anything before. So naturally, I was, of course, anticipating the final release of this final part of Atom here, mainly just to put it behind me. And I'd like to ask Billy Corgan something, that being, why the hell did you wait to put all of the decent songs on the last part of this album, you nincompoop?
Smashing Pumpkins?
It's
great album confirmed.
It's because now, fuck you. That's
here.
Why.
Look here. The Smashing Pumpkins, this band, they are not back. This is not a redemption. This is
so over.
Like
the
Jack Harlow album. Like the Jack Harlow album last week. This is barely worthwhile. But that is to say, as a singular project, just as like of itself, chapter 3 of Atom here, it's probably the best thing they've made since Oceania. And I don't say that even like really enthusiastically, because
all take there, Clay. Let's see how it plays out for him.
Yeah, but like the thing is that all of the worthwhile things on Atom here are hilarious. It starts off with the opener, Sojourner, which Billy just pronounces so wonderfully, is actually an admirable sort of 7-minute long, ambitious multi-part opener. It doesn't really come together, and the repeated hook is kind of lame, but I enjoyed it on the whole. The second song on here, that which animates the spirit, I mean, it certainly animated my spirit. This song is hysterical. Huge ass alt metal, borderline new metal riffs, screams of Billy Corgan going, "Zero," and "Glory, glory, hallelujah," along with this huge bit of operatic gang vocals, are so big and so stupid. I love it. This is pure brain-rotting stadium rock shit, and I love it. This is fun. There's stuff like the next song has like a stiff drum beat, but it has some nice synths and guitar work. James Iha is awake on some of the songs here. Swear to God, it actually finally happened. There's some parts on here with some pretty decent production work. There's some nice sounding stuff. It's not all particularly coherent. There's a song on here, let me check the title here, this In Lieu of Failure, where Billy sings about sending in the drones, accepting yourself, and says the word lollygagging. But at least the riffs are hard. There's there's Cenotaph, which is unfortunately not a Porcupine Tree cover, which is, I mean, it's a lame electronica ballad with silly lyrics.
I think it's very fortunate that that's not a Porcupine Tree cover, conversely.
I hope that Fireflies is an Owl City
Depends
cover.
on your perspective. Unfortunately, it is not. The hilariously titled Harmageddon, however, is glitzy pop metal that sounds like an 80s Metallica song playing at half speed that's being fronted by a pitch-shifted cartoon mouse. Look, I'm just glad that James Iha has something to do on here, because there's actually a genuinely very sick solo here. It was cool. There's the Fireflies begins with like a space ambient intro that progresses into Billy Corgan making a mid-tempo Churches song. It's both better and worse than you think, though I don't think Lauren Mayberry could sell the hook "Waiting on Your Fireflies," because what the fuck does that mean? The outro sounds like M83's outro. That's something.
That's cool.
There's
good as outros
it's
go.
fine. Intergalactic is 9 minutes of Billy Corgan trying out a whole lot of keyboard preset tones. This is the 4th song on this album, not the whole triple album. This album, he says the word zero as a hook on 4 different songs on here. Like, you'll never be her. This isn't Melancholy. You'll never be her again. Stop it, Billy. I need you to
like
stop
a conceptual sequel or
He should
something.
be like,
yeah, it is.
You would have thought he
Okay.
has moved on to 1.
Then there's Spellbinding, the penultimate track, which is Billy Corgan and company make a pop punk song, and it sounds like Diet Justin Meldal Johnson Jimmy Eat World type shit. I think it's pretty all right, honestly. It's fun, whatever. And then the closer on here, of Wings, is they say Agnus Dei, La La La, and Clementine a lot. It's the worst song on the album. Look, maybe it's Stockholm Syndrome at this point. I'm not denying that, but I had a bit of a roller coaster ride with this ending thing, and that is all I can hope for with Late Era Smashing Pumpkins. All I can say about Adam as a whole, as a 3-part thing, is that if the Smashing Pumpkins are going to exist and Billy Corgan isn't going to bite the bullet with butterfly wings and just make solo shit, if they're going to fail, then I prefer them fail like this. Because altogether, I couldn't tell you how this would play as a triple album sitting through the whole thing. I'm not going to fucking do that. I value my time. Look, I don't value my time enough to not listen to this, but I value it enough to not put myself through that bullshit. But look, Sear was awful because it was nothing. This is something. And I had a good time with some songs on here, and frankly, that is way more than I ever expected to say with Late Era Smashing Pumpkins. So, on much more exciting notes, because we reviewed Jessie Ware this week, I wanted to do a bit of not a deep dive or anything, just because I only have so much free time, but I wanted to listen to a little bit more, maybe some canon dance pop classics, some house music, just some stuff to get me more familiar with this kind of stuff. And the biggest highlight that I had was by far an artist who has been on my radar forever, because she has many highly acclaimed albums, and the catalog of which I'm just not familiar with at all, and that I have had promises from friends of ours, including Jacob Sanchez, that she has an amazing discography. That being, of course, the one, the only Miss Janet Jackson. And I've always been hesitant with her stuff, because if you look at any of her records, them bitches be long. They are long albums, and they are like usually like 26 tracks, and like half of them are interludes. And again, if you know our our now topic from last week, interludes, a concept we're not always a fan of. And I was like, this just seems like a lot. But I bit the bullet this week, and I listened to one of the albums that Jacob recommended to get into her, which is Rhythm Nation 1814. And God, this album is amazing. I'm not surprised, I guess, but I mean, holy shit. I really enjoyed this a lot more than I even thought, just because I figured I'd have at least certain limitations with it, just being a little bit afraid that length might encumber it a little bit. And, you know, it doesn't, I don't necessarily think that it benefits by being a hugely long record. But, however, the songs are simply here. The fucking title track on here, Rhythm Nation, this is one of the best dance pop songs I've ever fucking heard. The rhythm section on this album is hard. The production team of Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, they do the production for most of Janet's albums. That you know them from early on. They worked with people like Prince, for instance. They kind of pioneered the sort of, I think, I don't know if it was colloquially called like is it Missouri sound? I don't know. It's Minneapolis, the Minneapolis sound. That's right. And that, because that's the scene that they're from. And they have a specific style to their music that's very identifiable, very recognizable. And it honestly really reminded me, very unexpectedly, of the production style of Sophie. It's very metallic, very percussive, very big. You'll recognize a lot of aesthetic similarities on Rhythm Nation between stuff like, you know, Face Shopping or Pony Boy. Like, it's obviously taken to a much more extreme direction on Sophie's stuff, but I wouldn't be surprised if she was heavily influenced by them on records like this, or on, you know, Prince records, for instance. And that's sort of the case throughout the whole thing. And the whole Rhythm Nation concept is a lot informed by a lot of these interludes, which are actually really short, and I actually think make the album a little bit better, frankly. It's very much Janet using this concept to address current problems she sees in the world. And it's a pretty wide scope, a big net that she's casting here, where she's talking about, you know, inner city poverty, homelessness, class inequality, all that kind of stuff. And I don't necessarily think these topics are captured in a very deep way, but the point of the album isn't necessarily to, you know, dissect these topics. It's to present sound and dance music as a protest to all of these things, to inform people. There are moments where she gets very you know, children are the future kind of moments on here that I don't love quite as much. But again, the songs are simply always here. There's stuff like the rockier cut in the back half, Black Cat, which fucking slams. The balladry in the kind of last leg on songs like Lonely, Come Back to Me, Someday Is Tonight is all really, really solid stuff. Miss You Much is amazing. Fucking Love Will Never Do, All Right. These are songs that I was familiar with, but just didn't know these were the like singles that I have heard on the radio before. And I'm pretty sure this album has like a whopping 7 singles on it, all of which were successful. I mean, everyone talks about, you know, Janet being a very, you know, an artist who, you know, obviously is very big and deserving of her own following, but also someone who did inevitably live in the shadow of her, like, you know, the all-encompassing worldwide insane success that was Michael. But you know, in her heyday, she was batting it out with Michael pretty solidly, honestly, in terms of success. Like, she was nothing to sneeze at necessarily. Like, and you just can't compete with him necessarily. Like, he was a force. But
I mean, she was always the youngest as well. She was the youngest sibling in the family, so she always had the kind of kid sister thing to overcome. But the way she like established her personality in the 80s, especially with albums like Control, which is the only album of hers I actually heard in full, which is my regrettable shame. But yeah, she really like established herself in a really bold way, and that was something that just became so hard to ignore. And because of that, you know, slight and that ingrained sexism, I think the appreciation for her retrospectively has really grown.
And the last thing I'll mention in this sort of run of music that I did is I listened to I mean, it's not just a house album, and that's partially why it's fantastic, is because of how eclectic and cool it is. But it's something that I definitely wanted to recommend to at least Ryley, and that'd be an album from the artist Rei Harakami, their album Lust. This album seems to be like the album that's really caught on in their discography. They've made a fair bit of records, but this one seems to be the one that has really gravitated with people. And this is a down-tempo, it's got influences of stuff like, it's definitely got IDM, some folktronica, some ambient stuff, and it's also like house and like micro house, like a lot of influence from artists like, well, not influence, because I guess that this precedes some of the stuff that they made, considering it came out in like 2000, well, no 2005 was after that, but you can feel the influence of producers like Matmos on here specifically. There's like moments where I was really reminded of their work with Björk a couple of times, and some of their solo stuff as well. But this is a gorgeous album. I believe I read a Rate Your Music comment that was just like, this is a great album to wake up to in the morning, and I completely agree. It very much projects a kind of sunny, sort of like foggy countryside morning, even though it has a very kind of cold sound, but it's the kind of thing that still manages to feel inviting. There are really longer pieces on here, like Joy, Grief and Loss, or Come Here to Go There. Those pieces on here are amazing. Some of the most compelling like stuff that I've heard from music of this kind. It's really ornate, really detail laden. I was really reminded of early Autech, or very specifically Amber. That release here, there's a lot of the same tones, timbres, moods explored on a record like this, though I think that this is a little bit more consistent than a record like Amber, which I still love, by the way. But I found this to be a really enthralling listen that I got a hell of a lot out of.
Yeah, the way you're describing that, Roma, sounds a little bit like Ski Mask to me, which sounds very appealing, because I've been listening to a lot.
Oh God,
of that sort of comfy, sort of chilly, comfy, wintry,
ambient
micro
techno
house
kind of vibe.
Yeah, so that sounds really cool. I'll check that out for sure. On the other side of the coin, a new release that I'm not going to review as much as just acknowledge, because it's one. The legendary Smokey Robinson came back a week ago, probably closer to 2 weeks ago by the time anyone watches this, with his hyped and much discussed new album GASMS. And people were talking about this when the album was announced.
I'm sorry, like GASMS?
Yes,
GASMS?
You heard it correctly. Look, Smokey's a legend, living large, one of the great soul songwriters and influential figures. He's into his 80s at this point, but looking fresh as hell. And man is horny. Man is fucking. And man wants you to know. And this is an album of sex jams, right? The man is getting laid, all right? The man is fucking, and he needs you to know. And it's this awkward thing, right, where he is,
I'm good, man.
It's this thing, right, where it's not posturing.
I mean, I too would be telling everyone.
It's the thing. It's not posturing, because you totally believe that Smokey Robinson is still getting mad puss completely by it. But at the same time, I don't relate to him specifically.
Oh yeah, brother.
Like even in stages of my life where I was having more romantic success, I still wouldn't have been able to relate to this, because it's a particular manifestation of horniness that is so. Look, he's fully owning it, and he's so like, man is getting his nuts. But I mean, let's look at the title track, GASMS, right? Let's look at the song GASMS, and I'm going to read you the lyrics, so you can understand where he's coming from with the song. First of all, whole album produced like a fucking Steely Dan album. Immaculate. Like just, whoa, crisp as hell. But you, of course, have 83-year-old Smokey Robinson. GASMS. When I look at you, it makes me feel better than good. And what I see is you and me together forever. I'm knocking on wood. Every kind of gasm in the book. Each I hasm every time I take a look. You're the one responsible for my gasms. Eargasms. When I hear your voice, my eardrums start to quiver. It's a sexy sound, makes my love come down, and I can deliver. Any kind of gasm on the list. The gasms you don't give me, I don't think exist. You give me gasms, eargasms, soft and sweet, or the kind the neighbors hear gasms. If I think about you right now, gonna give me gasms.
Oh.
Every little thought somehow gonna give me gasms. You give me those mind gasms, those hard to find gasms, orgasms. Just think about you, or when you hear gasms, every kind of gasm ever known, and a few I think are only mine alone. You give me gasms. I'm not saying the word just to make a point. This is verbatim what he sings. You give me gasms. You give me gasms. If I think about you right now, going to give me gasms. Every little thought somehow going to give me gasms. He says the word gasms at least 50 times in this 4-minute song. All right. And that's track 1. All right. I'm not going to go through the album, but suffice it to say, it is very much all in this vein. Song titles like How You Make Me Feel, I Want to Know Your Body, I Keep Calling You, If We Don't Have Each Other, You Fill Me Up, and of course the
do not know
the incredible closing track, I Fit In There. So Smokey,
I'm glad. It would be bad if you didn't.
Smokey's going for it, right? And look, I just think also that this is one of the most iconic album covers of all time. Like, look at him. Like, he's just this man gets more sex in a week than you and I will have in our lifetimes.
He looks like that Doctor Who character that's just like stretched out skin.
So that's Smokey.
Apparently it works. But
he's giving gasms, right? And he's getting them. Gasms for everyone.
Thank you, Smokey.
We are so back. One more new release we want to talk about from an artist we talked about on the show before. One Miss Indigo De Souza is back with a new album, All of This Will End. Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about this new album from Indigo De Souza and what your thoughts are?
Indigo De Souza is an indie rock singer-songwriter. We talked about her album in 2021, I think, Any Shape You Take, which is a terrific record that we talked about on our underrated albums video that we both got along with really well. It was a very much tried and true indie rock, but blended with a slightly more ambitious digital bend to a lot of the sounds that were on there, but still didn't abandon the kind of rootsier groundedness that you would want and stuff like that. And Indigo as a performer has an amazing voice. She's an incisive lyricist. And it was just a really well put together record, very much in the vein of, Boy Genius style stuff. If you like that kind of stuff, you're gonna like this kind of stuff. And her new album, All This Will End, is very much a continuation of that, though I will say this album kind of one-ups the previous one in terms of sonic ambition, and that I was really reminded of that most recent Great Grandpa album on here. That grunge pop sound that band Explore is on here in spades. Some of those distorted guitars that are on those albums are on here, and occasionally they are enormous. She's not abandoned any of her songwriting strengths. A lot of this album focuses on, living in the wake of heartbreak, something tried and true, but if you look a little deeper into the lyrics, you'll find that this is very much at the peripheral of what Indigo is going through right now, and that she's mainly suffering a central existential crisis between her mind and her body. And this sort of dialogue between the two is elaborated upon throughout the whole album. That heartbreak kind of exists in a weirdly tangential way that keeps intruding back on her, and that she keeps trying to get rid of and push back. And a lot of what makes this album compelling to me is that it keeps kind of cycling through that. It keeps exploring this idea, then pushing away from it, exploring it, pushing away from it. And whenever it's pushing away from it, it's getting to the core of what's really bothering her. A lot of these moments really hit home. Even moments like the intro, this is 1 minute and 30 seconds long, and it's got this insatiably slick guitar line at the start, a great hook that they kind of hammer over and over again. There's light piano touches on here, a sick riff that comes back, keyboard and synth accents at the sort of apex of the build. It's a great opener, but also it just sort of keeps changing at different points on here, where there's like a chamber pop part in the sort of third segment, 30-second long build, and the middle here, which is like her reverting to a more lyrically simple state to just kind of showcase how badly she's been fucked up from all this, reverting to a kind of frankness that is kind of uncharacteristic of her that I find really refreshing. But she uses that to be a little bit more anthemic with the indie pop sound. There are crunchy guitars on stuff like You Can Be Mean, and I love how loud and expressive she is on here. It really kind of, it goes to show that there's a lot more under the hood than it seems, because she's definitely not blameless in a situation where she wants her partner to leave her, but at the same time, the severity of her partner's wrongdoing like goes really deep when she talks about, you know, expressing regret that she ever let him touch her. And there are moments on this album where she goes for the throat lyrically, just in very specific moments, like on Parking Lot, where she reminds herself of things like needing to eat, just to, you know, remind herself of being functional. And like, if you've ever had a panic attack or an existential crisis in the middle of a parking lot in your car, as I have often had, holy shit, you're gonna hit there. This is gonna hit you really fucking hard. There are lines on here like, I'm not sure what's wrong with me, but it's probably just hard to be a person feeling anything. It's like, all right, goddamn, I need a moment. And this album does give you breathing room occasionally. The end run of songs on this album is worth the listen alone. The run from Always, Not My Body, and Younger and Dumber is sensational. Always starts as like a sparse, like there's like a Phil Elverum style vocal melody that kicks this off, and there's like this quiet part of the song just breaks into this enormous fucking riff, and Indigo is screaming. I mean, this is like proper, like, it's, the guitar is so distorted on here, this sounds like fucking Black Gaze. This demolishes. She does things on here like she laments the loss of a presence of a paternal figure in her life, saying that she thought that he would stay. And again, a lot of this has to show that a lot of what's important on this album is what's unsaid too. She doesn't elaborate on whether or not her father abandoned her, whether or not he's dead, and frankly, with the way she puts it in the song, I don't know which one is sadder. The thing is that this song just absolutely tears ass. She screams, and it's amazing. And it goes into the incendiary Not My Body, which is just, it starts as an acoustic indie ballad, and it's this experience where she recounts a dissociative episode. And at the start of it, she demonstrates a disconnect from her true self. She expresses a very simple sentiment, which she does a lot on here, that she doesn't have time to change her clothes again, as if she's continually trying to dress with the intent of the world accepting her, but she tells herself that the world doesn't care, as if she's directly communicating with her body. And there's an explicit dialogue here that really synergizes the theme and the two separate parts of the song. There's like a dainty piano on the second verse that sort of transforms structurally drastically from the first part, which kind of transitions into a change of perspective, I see, where she becomes her body and then laments wanting to know what to do so confidently, like she does with her brain. The cries of "I want to be a redwood tree" on this part of the song is genuinely some of the most emotional and heartbreaking shit I have heard all year on any album, and it's so cathartic. I mean, it's damn near orgasmic at this point. And then the synths and outro of this are so eerie. This soundscape just comes in, and it feels like you've stepped into another dimension. It's this amalgam of weird sonic details, and then goes into Younger and Dumber, which wrecks me. It's a plaintive start, but she goes into this amazing lyrical melody that feels timeless, about being younger and dumber and built like a flower, and talks about how fucked up her partner made her and how small she felt in the past, and how totally receptive to that very specific kind of pain that she would get inflicted upon her in that relationship. Which way will I run when I want something new? I don't feel at home in this house anymore, is what she says. And this slide guitar comes in right as the tension escalates in this song. And then fucking Jesus, sometimes I don't want to be alone, and it's not because I'm lonely, it's just because I'm tired of filling the space all around me, is like the lyrical thesis for this whole fucking album. The vocal ascension here feels like it's the moment this whole thing has been building to. And honestly, like, this moment is just, it's worth the whole 30-minute buildup to get to here. The resolution to her internal conflict is that her current self is stuck and she's racked with indecision because she knows she's grown in the past, so she knows she'll grow in the future, but she's still kind of stuck at this crossroads and can open herself up to the possibility of perhaps starting over and getting past this sort of phase in her life and over this sort of heartbreak. And it's for a tight 30-minute long record, the narrative journey this takes you on is so detailed, so immediate, so punchy. You might dismiss it at slight upon first listen, but I promise this is one of the most rewarding albums I've listened to all year. If you want an album that's more solidly built and full of great individual songs, maybe listen to Any Shape You Take first. But as something that's a bit more conceptual, a bit more flowing into one thing, I feel like this is a little bit more ambitious, and it's just as good as her previous album.
Yeah, I mean, it's a rough listen emotionally. I mean, it's actually, honestly, the experience of it for me, tonally and thematically, is really not all that different to the National album that we talked about. It's just this album about being stuck and having a brick wall in front of your brain constantly. But there's a real wrecked agony to Indigo's performance on this album and to her writing that's so upsetting. They're so viscerally pointed and painful that it will take a lot out of you if you're not mentally prepared for that. But it is also, I think it lacks the fulsomeness of Any Shape You Take for me. I mean, there's just so many incredible songs on there. I mean, that's one of the best indie rock records of the last 10 years, in my opinion. And this one doesn't really have like a Real Pain or a Kill Me. But that all put aside, it does explore some of the emotions that are centered in some of those songs in more detail, or at least in a more diaristic way that I really appreciate, and that really leaves me with these big brutal moments. I think it is one of these records that just gets better as it goes along. And particularly, again, in that second half, you have a little bit of experimentation with the dancier sound of Smog, but then basically from the Water onwards through to the end of the record, like you said, it's just this run of Indigo just ripping herself apart and creating some of her most lasting and affecting songs in the process. Younger and Dumber is one of the songs of 2023, without question. I mean, that will be on our year-end list at some point because it's just that good of a song.
Yeah,
you know, to me, it's everywhere. It's her. It's almost like I don't want to make a comparison. It's just one of those things you hear and you're like,
you were going to say it's her I Know the End, weren't you? But you're right.
I was going to say that.
You're right.
It's got that I Know the End. It's got that triple dog there. It's got that feel to it. But the thing that distinguishes Indigo, apart from being a little bit more bluntly brutal and sometimes even like obfuscating the poeticism for just this ugliness than those artists, is that her voice is also like more raw. She has less like innate taste or talent for how to use her voice and more just willingness.
She's a rock vocalist.
Yeah, she's just got more willingness to lean into the more atonal aspects of her voice. And that's not a sneak diss. It's one of her strengths. Like there will be parts of her singing where she's just hanging on a note that is just off and wrong and bad, but she's doing it intentionally. And she has a lot of power and violence in the way that she sings that those other artists don't. And yeah, the line that really gets me is on that song is, I was nobody, you came to hurt me in all the right places and made me somebody. Like that idea of feeling as though all of your worth comes from your pain, comes from how you've been hurt. Like that's a thought that's really stuck with me. Yeah, I think it's a really good album. I didn't love it the way I was hoping to, but that's okay because Any Shape You Take still has not worn off me in the slightest. And I agree. This has this more low stakes approach and this sense of like continuity within itself that makes it something you experience as a 33-minute single thing, as opposed to when I can just pluck songs off of Any Shape You Take and experience them. I think the only song on this album that works in isolation is Younger and Dumber. And even then, as the closing track, it gathers so much momentum from being heard in the context of the album. So yeah, fully recommend this. Another strong record from Indigo, one of the singer-songwriters of the moment to really keep an eye on. All right, let's move into our discussion topic for the day, which is our favorite non-album singles, songs that were released but never put on a full studio album. If they made it onto a compilation eventually, that's fine. But songs that you listen to the song, that my prevailing thought with the idea behind this was, it's got to be a song that you listen to and think, why did you not put that on an album? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, this should have been on an album. That's the impetus behind this. And we all have songs like this. Kind of hard for me to make my picks as well, but each of us have picked 3, and we're going to cycle through them, give our thoughts in alternating form as we do in these Now episodes. So Jake, what is your first pick for rate non-album singles?
Well, I'm going to pick maybe the quintessential answer to this very question. A pick so obvious it almost feels it almost felt stupid of me to pick it, but I couldn't not, just because it's very likely my favorite song from this band, the first song I ever heard from this band, a song that no doubt everyone has probably heard. It's probably the first song from this band that everybody hears, I would be willing to say, outside of an album context, just because it's used in so many movies, and that being Atmosphere by Joy Division. I mean, like, do I even need to elaborate? It's fucking Atmosphere by Joy Division. This is one of the best fucking songs ever written, and not just one of the best songs ever written. This is one of the best fucking sounding songs ever made. What's really interesting about this is a band that we've technically covered the entire discography of. And when you go back and sort of inform yourself of the sounds of those records, is that nothing really, I kind of understand why it didn't make it onto a record. I mean, obviously I know why it didn't make it onto a record, but whatever. But it couldn't have been on either of those 2 records because it doesn't sound like anything on them. This is a song that is about, and say it with me, kids, the atmosphere. I mean, it's fucking Titanic. This thing sounds immense, but not in like a heavy or like an industrial way like you typically would with a Joy Division song. And I mean, yes, the lyrics are properly kind of heartbreaking, but this is something that just you feel the weight of, in the sense that you almost feel like, it feels like when I listen to this song, I'm Atlas attempting to hold up the earth. There's something oppressive about it, but it doesn't suffocate you. It almost is a Joy Division song that nearly feels bright or comfortable to some extent, but it has a kind of, there is a lingering darkness in it, but there is something really unique, something really special about this song. It definitely feels like it's the precursor to a lot of what they would do in New Order, in that this feels like they're on the verge of a new sound. And I think that you could make a case for this being one of the best examples of something being transitional and wholly benefiting from that, because it still relies on the fundamental things that make a Joy Division song a Joy Division song, and what makes good Joy Division songs that. But I mean, the fact that this is like, I mean, obviously there's also singles released by this band like Love Will Tear Us Apart and These Days, but the dual single release of Atmosphere and She's Lost Control, this is like the God Only Knows and whatever the B-side was to God Only Knows, in terms of like the tears of the, yeah, wouldn't it be nice, in terms of like, this is one of the best singles ever fucking released, because these 2 songs are immaculately perfect. And it's just like, I mean, come on, it's untouchable.
I feel like most people probably would think of Love Will Tear Us Apart as the obvious pick, and I like that song's one of the greatest songs ever written. There's just no doubt about it. But yes, Atmosphere is that good too, and in a very different way as well. It's got this kind of resignation to it, but it's a kind of comforting resignation, like you say. What's crazy about this pick is that I was going to put originally my favorite Joy Division New Order, because there's so many great non-album singles between these 2 bands. That's kind of almost a shtick to a certain extent, is making amazing songs, like Blue Monday being another obvious pick, right? How did that never make an album? My pick was going to be Temptation, which is my favorite New Order song. But I saw you pick a Joy Division song. I was like, okay, one's enough. I'm going to steer away from that. But, you also got, obviously, True Faith and Ceremony as well, whether you count that as Joy Division or New Order. It's kind of ridiculous how many you could pick, to be honest. And I guess you could debate whether
that's why their compilations do so well.
I guess you could debate whether like stuff that made it onto Still counts as non-album, or Substance for that matter. But like,
I mean, and I feel like
area.
You would be right in saying that those are non-album tracks, but it does feel like taking something off of Substance is kind of cheating.
But Substance was a compilation that came much later, so but great.
That's why I was okay with picking it.
Great first pick. Morgan, what's your first pick?
For my first pick, this is a song that was actually never even released as a single. It remains technically unreleased by the band, but it is Smile by Deftones, which is a top 10 song of theirs. And it has the added sort of shadow hanging over it that it was part of the album they were working on when Shi Chang had his accident. And that's why it's never been released, and nothing else they were working on then has been released. An absolute powerhouse of a song, and demonstrates so much of what Deftones have always been great at in sterling fashion. I think when Abe Cunningham comes in with the drums on this song, it feels a little bit like seeing new colors. It's a song that I have genuine difficulty describing. If you're a fan of the band and you haven't heard it, then you must rectify that.
It's very well representative of like the lost, I don't want to say lost potential, because obviously they went on to deliver fantastic records in the aftermath of G's passing anyway, and the abandonment of Eros. But it is like a great representation of like the effervescent, like just purely beautiful appeal of what that era appeared to be and appeared to be heralding. And it's an amazing song. I re-listened to it this morning as well, just gorgeously colorful and so textural in a way that you get a little bit of it on Diamond Eyes and more so on Queen of Your Calm, but still it feels like something that is so beautiful,
almost because it is of something that we will never have. And something about the song just kind of sounds like that feeling, even if it is sort of something we project onto it.
Yeah, I will say my only tiny quibble with the song is I kind of wish that Chino didn't say, "Do you feel wet?" Just like that one line. I wish he'd kind of changed, but the rest of it's immaculate.
But it's also a Deftones song.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I don't know what I'm doing.
If he wasn't getting a little a little nasty with it.
Yeah, it's just like it's nice when like the innuendo doesn't have that kind of texture, but it's an amazing song. I'm just being picky.
You should have said moist.
Yeah, that would have made it better for sure. It's like if he said pussy in a song, like it wouldn't be out of character, but it would be wrong. You'd be taking the bit too far, man.
Yeah,
I'm being really demeaning. It's a great song. Just shut up to me. My first pick is a pick from a band who are, in contrast to Joy Division, not at all known for non-album songs. In fact, a band that so fully mastered the album format that almost no music that isn't on their albums exists at all. But this is one of their most beloved songs, a big staple of the radio, which is ironic considering that the song is very directly a love letter to the radio. And that is the Steely Dan song FM, parentheses, no static at all. This song was recorded and released in the Asia era. In fact, came out after that album. And a lot of people who heard this song and loved the song mistakenly believed that it was on the album. It fits in so well with that entire vibe. Immaculate, one of those classic Steely Dan songs that musically is deceptively more complex than it seems, but so smooth and so just tasty that you don't pick up on any of the subtleties of what it's doing musically. You just fucking love the fucking jammy jazz of it all. It has this incredible tenor sax solo from Pete Kreislieb, lots of backing vocals from the Eagles, lots of great collaborations that are basically peak Steely Dan, peak yacht rock, peak jazz rock, great drumming from Jeff Porcaro, just a classic Steely Dan song through and through, an effervescent, very humorous, but also just immaculate love letter to a very specific time and a very specific aesthetic that their music gets associated with and kind of lumped in with kind of reductively, but still has that sense of humor and kind of, I guess, spunk that Donald Fagen was able to bring to a lot of the music that he was making at that time. And yeah, I adore this song. It's a classic Steely Dan song, does everything you want from a Steely Dan song. It won a Grammy for Best Engineered Recording because of course it did. Peak music, really. And it would have fit in on Asia, to be honest, which is an immaculate album. And I do think they could have put this song on here and made it work. It's not as if Asia is like too long or anything. So yeah, I love this song. I know every Steely Dan fan loves this song, but a lot of people who are getting into Steely Dan nowadays don't hear it because it's not on one of the albums. So take the time to check it out. It's got amazing sax solo, amazing drumming, smooth as hell bass work, incredible piano work from Donald Fagen, as well as this stunning string section arranged by Johnny Mandel. Everything about it fucking rules. So that's my first pick today.
I'm going to go with a song from my favorite band, because of course I am, with a band who have as extensive of a back catalog of songs that weren't like officially released or officially put out on albums. It's kind of difficult not to, frankly. I was spoiled for choice. So I went with one of my favorite Porcupine Tree songs, and that being Stars Die. This song is incredible, and it's also an opportunity to shout out a song from the earlier era of their music, which we haven't really talked about on here before, mainly because I really think that I know that Morgan certainly has an affinity for some of them, but I'm the one with the strongest feelings towards the earlier Porcupine Tree records. And, you know, it's a lot less metallic and it's a lot more psych rocky. That said, I love the sort of ambient spatial vibe that this has. It's a song that just feels totally otherworldly, and Steven Wilson lyrically is just describing this cosmic event of just, well, I mean, stars dying, but also just sort of like everything being engulfed in darkness, and just like this thing that makes you feel like you're witnessing basically the end of the universe. But it's so quiet. I mean, it borders on ambient pop, but everything about it still feels like kind of muscular in the way that you would want Porcupine Tree to still be. Obviously, they're focusing on the more, psychedelia-oriented area of their sound, and it's just a great song to relax to. It's an underrated, I mean, I guess that's what a lot of people do with some psychedelic music, but it's something that is a source of nice sonic comfort, especially in its remastered form. When it did later appear on a compilation, but it was released as a single by itself way earlier. So that was why I kind of felt comfortable picking it. And it's why if I listen to that entire kind of remaster that includes a lot of other sort of Porcupine Tree like B-sides and alternate takes and stuff, it perfectly flows with the experience. And it always was like a highlight of that era for me. Kind of all of their best tendencies of that era of their music sort of crystallized into this one perfect song that's great in a way that not a lot of other, of the great Porcupine Tree songs are great. And that's why it has a lot of novelty to me.
My second pick is something that actually appears on a greatest hits album from The Killers. The song being Shot at the Night. Probably a top 5 Killers song for me, and like easily the best thing they had released from Sam's Town until Pressure Machine, probably. I like a handful of songs on Imploding the Mirage, but probably none more than this one. And it's just so strange to me.
It's a fucking Killers M83 crossover. Like it's so on point. I can't believe it exists, but it makes total sense.
I can't believe it exists and wasn't on an album.
I wish they had like if you're going to team up M83 and the Killers, which, you know, might initially seem weird if you don't think it, but once you think about it, it makes perfect sense, right? Because they're heavily synthesizer based, like anthemic music about searching and all this kind of stuff, right? So it makes total sense, right? This is M83 in 2013 as well, coming off the back of Hurry Up, We're Driven. Why don't you make an album together? They should have made a fucking album together.
God.
This is just everything that the Killers were and are and have ever been so good at in a really concise, perfectly structured pop song package. Flowers, I don't think, has ever sounded better before or since. It's just one of them pop songs that's just like, I believe in something greater than all this. And I don't even know what that means, but the song makes me feel that good.
It's like when he gets to that, give me a moment, I have tears running down my fucking face.
Like I want to sob, and I have no idea why.
People like
I've seen something.
You know, people meme Brandon Flowers for like Mr. Brightside or Are We Human? Are We Dancer? Or whatever. But people forget.
Perfect songs for the record.
Absolutely. People forget. Yeah. He's legitimately one of the most powerful vocalists we have.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Like the man, when he fucking goes for it, and if he can't make, there's no one. He just has this thing in his voice where it's like when he really leans into it, he feels like it's gonna break, or like he's gonna lose. He's gonna fucking burst into tears, but he never does. He keeps it in. He's made for it, man. And with those synthesizers, with those blaring fucking M83, Anthony Gonzalez, Meldal Johnson, fucking I forgot how good this song was until you put it on the list, and I went back and listened to it, and I was like, fuck.
Like it's so emotional for reasons that I can't that I don't really have an explanation for. They just walked up to the plate and they knocked that fucker right out of the park, like clear over the lights in the stands, just into fucking space.
You know, the other reason I'm glad you picked this, Morgan, is that people don't give this song its flowers, no pun intended. Like, people don't appreciate this enough. Like, this is not well regarded enough for me. You know what I mean? No one talks about this song.
Yeah.
And I get it, because they were in the middle of their, like, you know, they were in the Battleborn era where Flowers was kind of like self-parodic and how hard he was going into that we only have one life type of shit that he was doing.
Yeah.
Just take a moment to step back from all of that and listen to the song and tell me you don't feel something, man. Ugh.
It's just like, I don't.
Got me doing fucking Big Quint over here, like, ooh. For me, there's like 3 or 4 like all-timer killer songs from the last 10 years. You know, My Own Soul's Warning, first song off of Exploding the Mirage, which I know we weren't super into as an album, but to me that song is incredible. Obviously,
I love that song and Caution.
Obviously West Hills off of Pressure Machine. You know, that shit is that we went into it, right?
Yeah,
we did that shit. We went down that road. I would also put Terrible Thing, which I think that's a stupidly underrated song. I mean, and this
you need to add the title track to Pressure Machine in there, because frankly, if you don't melt inside when he hits those really high vocal harmonies, you are dead inside.
Yeah. Dead. Basically, what we're saying is that the Killers somehow, despite being one of the biggest bands and most successful bands the last 20 years, are somehow underrated.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but it is the truth.
It is true
of the matter.
Yeah. My second pick is, you know, an artist that, you know, one of my childhood favorite artists that I've never really talked about on the show, just because there's never really been a context for it. But, you know, one of the most successful and also one of the most well-aging of the British electronic bands of the 90s, that being Underworld. just an immensely important band to young me as well. Just a great, like, if you want to hear like really long albums that explore like languorous, beautiful electronic ideas and hazy, drug-addled soundscapes, Underworld have the most immaculate run of the 90s, to be honest, in that lane. Incredible band. And they're a really successful band. They had a lot of successful singles, but none was more successful than 1995's Born Slippy, later re-released as Born Slippy Nux, which, if you know the song at all, you'll know it from the Trainspotting soundtrack. It is by far the most famous song on that soundtrack, which is saying
incidentally something we have also already talked about.
Yes, but I want to zero in on this song in particular, because to me, this is one of the great dance singles of all time. It has that iconic, beautiful, dreamy synth passage that loops. It has this ranting, raving, spoken word rapping style delivery from frontman Carl Hyde, where he talks in surrealistic fragments of lyrics about alcoholism and the poisonous nature of the kind of behavior that Carl was engaging in when at the height of his alcoholism. And then once that dreamy passage subsides and the 500 words per minute rapping style delivery is kind of reached its most frenetic, you get one of the hardest beats of all time. The drum the fucking drum in this song is earth-shattering. The bass kick drum sound in this changed the world. And that's not even really an understatement considering how big this song was in the 90s. It is just one of the pinnacles of rave culture. It is one of the pinnacles of electro, techno, house music in the 90s. It's one of the pinnacles of the entire subculture and counterculture of music and art and film and everything that the entire 90s is soaked in. And this song is right at the center of it. You know, it is by far the most famous song this band ever made, but not for lack of other contenders. They were in an immaculate run. And what I love about Underworld is that they're not afraid to make hypnotic, heavy dance music. Stuff with really pulsing beats, with serrating, memorable, instantly classic synth sounds that also just explores this languorous mid-tempo soundscape that lets you get totally lost in it. I mean, you haven't really listened to Underworld until you've heard them in the dark and just let your body fucking go crazy to the beats. One of the most iconic dance acts of all time, Born Slippy, their most iconic song. A song that has a surprising amount of poignancy that you might not initially recognize. But again, like I said, it is about the suffocating and poisonous effects of alcoholism in the context of the rave culture for Carl Hyde specifically. It taps into a lot of aspects of culture in Britain and the UK specifically in the 90s that were harmful, that, you know, does align with a lot of what Trainspotting's about as well, but also has a sense of humor to it. And it just has that synth sound, man. It just has that gorgeous synth sound that honestly makes you feel like you could die happy right there listening to it. And when that synth sound gives way to that fucking kick drum, it's like you have died and you're fucking falling to hell. Few songs like it in the whole world, man. What a classic. Play that shit anytime. So that's my second pick for great non-album singles. Why the fuck they didn't put this on Second Toughest in the Infants, which is their best album, I have no idea. All right, Jake, coming back round again. Your final pick for best non-album singles. What have you got for us?
I lit up to this one because this is without a doubt my favorite of my options and my favorite, like, this might be my favorite single period for a couple reasons, but namely I have chosen as my final pick and my favorite being Yurameki in the Air by Fishmans. And if you're in the know about Fishmans, I don't need to say shit. You know why this is here.
I am not in the know. Please say more.
This song is, like, typically the only way you can hear it is on the monolithic Fishmans Live album, which we've spoken about briefly on a What You've Been Listening To at the end of last year. And we will speak on it later because we are going to do a Fishmans discography dive with Jacob eventually.
That is happening.
Of
100%.
course we are.
We will make it happen.
Definitely going to happen. But that moment on that live album, when you get to the second disc, that is one of the most, and like, I need you to cast aside any tendency inside you might have to not take hyperbole seriously. But that second disc on that Fishman's live album is one of the most just confounding, transcendent pieces of music you will ever hear in your life. I promise you. And if you don't think that, don't speak to me. Don't even think about me. I don't care about you.
Do not perceive.
And the apex of the apex of that second disc is Urameki in the Air. That performance, that is the moment Fishman's became one of my favorite bands. I was just like that. And I'll be honest, the live version is superior to the studio version, and the studio version is my pick here. But the thing is, though, is that the live version is the only way you can hear it. Except this was released as a single with the B-side to it being the instrumental backing to it. This song is 13 minutes long, and the single release for this is total of 26 minutes. I have basically listened to this single on a loop as like its own EP, 26-minute long EP, just the version with the vocals and the version without, like for hours. I've listened to this a lot. I have an embarrassing amount of scrabbles on these two songs. And not to say that like just because it's not as good as the live version and it doesn't have, you know, the tracks on either side of them that prop it up and make it even better. But in and of itself, this is a 13-minute long down-tempo neo-psych song that's so simple. But everything about this band that's amazing is in this song. It's very, very simple. You get a lot of what makes great, like Shinji, an amazing, very eccentric vocalist who is just like really reaching the top of that upper register in this vocal performance. And I can see that being a bit of a turnoff to some people, but if it is, then just listen to the version of the song without vocals because it exists. But it's his performance, especially on the hook and the way he holds the note on in the end, it makes you feel like all of the clouds in the sky are parting. Just like nothing bad in the world exists when Urameki in the Air is playing. It's got this beautiful, simple little drum beat, this little synth ascendant progression that's just like boom, 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 boom. It's so very dainty but textural. Everything about this feels just, it feels produced in a way that is just enough to be properly felt by you. It's the same feeling I get when listening to the entirety of Long Season. And in fact, I think this feels like it's almost like a shorter, condensed version of something like Long Season. And you can only get it in this single form, which is why it's the quintessential choice for me for my favorite non-album single. And again, it's also to the point where you're just like, why the fuck isn't this on it now? Like, I mean this, if this song was placed at the end of their final studio album, Uchu Nippon Setagaya, that would be like in my top 20 albums of all time. Like, that is the only reason why I probably couldn't give that album perfect marks. If it was on that album, it would be perfect.
I love the idea of holding it against an album that it doesn't have a song on it, a particular song on it. Instead of like,
yeah, it's
because that album ends perfectly already.
Yes, it does. But it's a thought experiment that I've had where it's just like, well, what album would it fit on? Well, it would fit on Uchu Nippon Setagaya. And if it did, it would just be like, somehow that would be an even better ending than the already perfect one it has. So it both embodies what can be frustrating about a non-album single and what makes a non-album single great. Like, I could listen to this literally for 24 hours out of a given day. I love it so much.
It's the kind of song that ruins other songs, to be honest.
Yes.
When the fucking violin comes in like halfway through this song, like the violin, and it's even better in the live version, as you say, but I do think the single version is like impeccable as it is. But that violin, when that shit comes in, especially the way that they record the violin as well, it always has this kind of extra sort of harsher, woodier texture that I love. And it's just like, it's like picking you up and it feels like I'm being kind of torn apart, but it's beautiful at the same time. I don't fucking know what I'm saying, man. This shit just takes me away.
My final pick today is a band we have talked circles around at this point, and we're never going to be done talking about them because they just keep giving us reasons in one way or another. But my last pick is Block Party's 2 More Years. I have to echo a sentiment of Jake's just a second ago, really, is that, yes, Silent Alarm is in my top 20 albums of all time. It would be in my top 10 if 2 More Years was on it.
I already get pissed that the main version of Silent Alarm that most people hear doesn't have Little Thoughts on it. Like
it's fucked up. It's fucked up. What if they fumbled the bag?
Here's my here's my thing. Yeah, Silent Alarm is perfect. 2 More Years should be on there instead of Compliments. That's my only gripe with that album, is I just think Compliments it's a good song. It's just not the way I would want that album to end. You swap that out for 2 More Years, I give that shit a 10. That's where I'm at.
I say Plans, Compliments, and then 2 More Years.
Okay.
Because why not have it all? And like that's I'm sure somebody had a reason for not putting this on there. It's a wrong reason. It's a bad reason. I think in many ways this is like probably not my favorite Block Party song ever, but I think in many ways it's like the platonic ideal of it. It sounds unbelievable. Like,
you hit a note here when you said that was
that.
like the most incredulous anyone has ever sounded. Like, just
you went like full Joker mode there for a second.
Like it is the kind of thing that beggars belief, really, because this is just a band with 2 guitarists and a bassist and a drummer, and obviously as a studio opens up a lot of abilities for people to make sounds that are cool. But how do they do that? Like this is just such a dense mix. It's such a dense song in general, and the way that Block Party so often was. Just as soon as you're like, the song can't get better than this, then it hits the bridge, and you're like, what?
Yeah, I mean, I honestly think it would fit in a little bit better on Weekend in the City than Silent Alarm if you had to put it on an album. But I still think it wouldn't ruin Silent Alarm anyway. It's an amazing song. It reminds me a little bit of my favorite song off of Weekend, which is Waiting for the 718, has that same kind of feel to it. And it's also like there's a little bit of it that reminds me of like the Strokes, but it's like the Strokes if Julian Casablancas like felt real emotions and expressed them.
And they had, instead of a good drummer, they had the best.
Well, and that was the thing about Block Party, right? Is that they're just elementally, they're the same, there's the same kind of set of people, it's the same band construction as the Strokes or everyone else. But they were all able to make every individual element sound like 3 of them. You know what I mean? Like the guitars sound huge. The bass sounds heavy. The drums are fucking Matt Tong drums. Everything is just so maximal in a way that a lot of the bands at the time were almost scared to be. There was this kind of, because post-punk revival was like, as great as a lot of the bands and music were at that time, a lot of it felt like it was this minimalist idea of let's pare everything down. Let's make everything sound really kind of like sort of atmospheric and angular, but with space in it. And Block Party were like, fuck that. We don't need space in our songs. We need fucking everything to fit in and make it feel like so just loaded. And that really jives with a sensibility that I know we have for that kind of maximalist, hard-on-sleeve, emo-tinged music.
Yeah, I mean, the only problem I have with it fitting on Weekend in the City is that, especially in comparison to something like Waiting for the 718 or I Still Remember, those songs are like they spark joy, and this is melancholy. if it was the most urgent shit imaginable. The song is so good that it manages to have the line, "You've cried enough this lifetime, my beloved polar bear," and still be one of the greatest songs I've ever heard in my life.
It'd still be. That shit is devastating. Ugh.
Okay, but yes, but polar bear?
Well, like, you know, people have cute little pet names for people, and that the specificness of that just fucking hurts, man. Like, that yeah, it's a bit goofy, but like that, you know, he means someone real in his life when he says that. And
no doubt. And like, it's also just, I don't know, just upon the immediacy of the line, is like, did he fucking say polar bear?
Yeah, I mean, it's very Calais. It's true. It's
yeah,
true.
It is.
Calais is like all about doing shit because he feels it and he doesn't care if it works or not.
Truly the Rivers Cuomo of England.
We don't have time to unpack that. It
makes sense to me. That's
yeah,
all I'm gonna say.
It's an amazing song. Like, it makes me feel somewhat similar to your Killer's pick, honestly. I mean, we're cut from the same cloth here, just like
yeah. That's my favorite cloth.
My last pick is, similarly, it's a song that makes me want to cry, but not in a larger than life, chest beating, feeling all the emotions in the world way, but more of a like, God, I'm so pathetic and lonely and just everything sucks. And I saved this one for last as well, because it's the unique example of a non-album single that is, to me, and I like a lot of this artist's other songs, although they don't have many, to be fair, but to me, not only is this like the great non-album single of the last 10, 20 years even, it's also handily the artist's best song and definitive song. And no matter, even though there's been very little music from this artist for a long time, no matter what they go on to do, they'll never top it, because it can't be topped. And that is Sky Ferreira's Everything Is Embarrassing. This song, to me, is the white whale of non-album singles. You know, to the point where I think on subsequent reissues of Nighttime, My Time, it is included as a bonus track, but it was never on the album proper originally. From the production, from 2010's pop mastermind Ariel Reichstad, I can't say his name, Reichstad, whatever it is, great guy, great sonic constructor, to Sky's just disaffected, lonely, searching, broken vibe. I can't pin down the exact feeling in the way that she sings on this song. It is just this melding of these different types of melancholy, but mixed in with her, like, you know, rich girl affected suburban gloom. You know, that whole thing where it's like, yeah, she's sad, but she's sad even though she has everything. And it's like, it's this kind of vain sadness, but it's sold so well that I'm like, fuck, I feel myself inside of all of this. It's the kind of sadness that you catch yourself feeling and you'd be like, why the fuck am I so self-indulgent? Grow up. But you still have that sadness, even though you're aware of how ridiculous it is. And that fits in with a song being called Everything Is Embarrassing, right? You know, it's a song about pining for someone. You know, on the face of it, it's a love song. Baby, if you let me be your lover. Baby, if you've tried, then I would not bother. It's a song about being in love with someone because that feels like the obvious thing to do with all of these emotions you have. But not because you're actually in love, not because you need someone, but just because you need a vehicle for all this fucking feeling. And Sky sells it so well. It's just, you know, musically, chordally as well, it has this like sunset vibe to it, you know, and sunset in the city, just this particular like 5 p.m. sadness. You're too fucking tired to drink, but too fucking hopeless to just go home. And you're just driving around or even just rambling around the city streets and just feeling everything and just being a mess. This, to me, is like one of the songs of the 2010s to me. Not just one of the best songs, but one of the most representative of like how I spent that entire decade feeling. You know, I was 13 when the decade started. I was 23 when it finished. And the whole time I was the main character of Everything Is Embarrassing by Sky Ferreira. It's just this desolate song, and I adore every second of it, and it will absolutely for sure be represented in an upcoming list I'm working on my favorite songs of all time. To me, it doesn't get better than this.
I can't remember when I heard this song, but a switch flipped, and I don't know what switch exactly, but I was not the same person after the song finished. I think the main reason I want Sky Ferreira to start releasing music again is because I would listen to her sing anything. There's something in particular about her voice that is like, I mean, I've never done heroin, but it can't be better than that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, she just has this vibe where it's like, this is someone who's obviously had a very privileged life, and whose problems are maybe to a large extent of their own making. But at the same time, somehow all of that only makes her feel more relatable and more real. It's that feeling of like, everything sucks, but I have too much good shit, and I'm too fortunate to feel like I deserve to whine about. Maybe we're just white, and that's all it is. But
well, I mean, that is certainly a factor.
That's emo though, in a nutshell, right? It's like, it's being privileged and feeling intensely self-conscious about your desire to complain about everything in your life, and still doing it anyway. And that's why Everything Is Embarrassing is such a great title for it as well. Such an honest thing that a lot of artists would try and like have the pride to cover up or just call it something else. But no, Sky's just laying it out straight. Yeah, everything is embarrassing. And that's how it feels to be alive.
I think my favorite Sky Ferreira song is probably Heavy Metal Heart. But
that's a good one. I love that song.
I don't know. My Time has some fucking killer tunes. And why was this not on it? I know it was on the Ghost EP, but
I don't know my favorite on that album, but it's probably either 24 Hours or I Blame Myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like sad girl. That's sad girl pop before it was a thing, right? And in a lot of ways, as much great sad girl pop as has been made since then, no one has approached the depths of like pure, meaningless, embarrassing misery that Sky has on that album. Like, that's turning 10 later this year, so I don't know, maybe we'll talk about it some more then.
That's a really interesting album in a lot of ways. So I think that would certainly make it a good record club.
I think so, because not all of it really works, but it's still a great album, and that makes it interesting. That brings us to the end of our discussion of our favorite non-album singles. Let us know your favorite non-album singles in the comments below. Want to hear your picks, want to hear why you love them, want to hear what you think of our picks as well. If you have any thoughts, let us know. Love your comments, love reading them, always appreciate you. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Both those things help us out a great deal. If you want to go above and beyond and support us even more for just $1 a month, you can hit the join button, become a member of the GASMS family, get yourself entitled to such perks as your name and the title call of every video on the channel. Plus, if you want to recommend us some music to talk about in our now episodes, your recommendation will go to the top of the pile. Until next time though, folks, rock over London, rock on Chicago, lays. Bet you can't eat just one.